You know, about a month ago, I was reading, you know, y'all heard me say this before, I read Drudge Report daily, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day. And a lot of people read it. I read Newsmax, and I have to get the liberal side of things, and I look at Yahoo News. But anyway, I saw an article, I think it was on Drudge, by a guy named Michael Snyder, and it was on a website called Infowars.com. And I'm going to read you some excerpts from this article. And, you know, I just took some excerpts out of it. We are witnessing a religious shift unprecedented in size and scope in American history. And I'm quoting, paraphrasing a little bit from pretty much verbatim. Each year, the percentage of Americans that claim no religious affiliation is growing, especially among millennials. Now, I should have looked this up. What age group is millennials? Is that 20 to 30? Around that age? Only 27% of millennials, now of course they researched this to get this information, only 27% of millennials attend weekly services. And this is not anything against millennials. I'm just reading the article, and there's some message behind it. You know, if this continues, it's going to be an enormous impact on our society. Now, the author really didn't go into what the impact was, and I said, if I'm going to quote that, I really need to give somewhat of an answer. This is Blaine's thought. I'm breaking away from the quotes here just a little bit. You know, America is becoming in this process more ungodly. Now, for all of its faults, and there are many, the church in America has had and continues to have a positive impact on society. Now, there's people on the other side that will argue that and all this. That's not the point here. But from my perspective, the church has and will continue to have a positive impact on society. But as it becomes less godly, I mean, we see the things that happen in society, the cruelty and the things that happen in society. It just creates a more ungodly situation, that we live in. You know, the U.S. was founded by people who were extremely committed to their faith. I'm quoting the author here. Now we're rapidly becoming a nation where people are choosing no religion at all. Like Europe, the U.S. is on the path of becoming a post-Christian society. One of the things yesterday we talked about this very thing, and I just happened to find this article after my first session in Montgomery a month ago, and that's what the professor was talking about. You know, I've been to Europe twice. You go to Europe, great cathedrals that we all know and are famous, but it's just a building. You go to the Western European countries, it's void of religion, religious service. And I'm sure there's some people, but it is a post-Christian society. 100 years ago, Europe was considered a Christian culture, a Christian society. Anyway, the author says the U.S. is on the same path. Even though we live in a time where there's a mass exodus from Christian churches, most Americans, even those not attending church, still believe in God. You know, atheism is in a minority, always been in a minority. And in fact, I think the author said, looking back, that even agnosticism and atheism is not growing. You know, people believe in God. People believe in spiritual things. People want to believe in God because we feel God's presence. That's the reason John Wesley talked about prevenient grace. The Spirit of God is everywhere. The Spirit of God is talking to the ungodly people and saying, you need to come to God. You need to come to church. That's the reason the sign says, come back to church. You know, I do think through these things. I do have a method in my communication with the community. And I do try to communicate. It's not for y'all, necessarily. It's for the people who drive up and down this road. I mean, I'm here on Wednesday afternoon. You know, it's every Wednesday, and it's like zoom, 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 zoom. And of course, y'all that live around here, y'all know there's a lot of traffic back here. Americans still believe in God. They're interested in spiritual things and trying to fill the void with alternatives. Now, I'm not going to get, I wrote down some notes after this, hobbies, sports, and all this kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with going to the football games, and there's not anything wrong there with playing golf. Oh. There's nothing wrong with hunting and fishing. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with even doing it on Sunday.
As long as you don't miss church.
What's that?
As long as you don't miss church.
Well, I'll even say this.
Okay.
You know, if there's one of those special golf tournaments, now, I'm not picking on you, or special fishing tournaments. Let's change it to fishing. I was talking to, Wyatt Martin. Wyatt has aspirations of being a professional bass fisherman. And he was asking me, we were talking about they have the tournaments on Sunday. He said, I don't know why they do that, but that's what they do. He said, so I'm really torn. You know, Wyatt wants to be, we're going to baptize him next Sunday. He wants to be part of this church. He's helping on Wednesday nights. But anyway, so there's those times, go fishing on Sunday. Go hunting on Sunday. Go play golf on Sunday. You know, there's family reunions. That's you know, life happens. You have to go on business trips sometime on the weekend. And it's just the way it is. It's our culture and our society. Some people have to work. You know, you got to work. You know, we're just not a big enough church to have multiple services and to meet everybody's needs. That's the reason some of these churches have services all kinds of time a day to be able to meet the needs of those people that do work odd hours. Cindy, I remember when you were, and you said, one of the reasons you wanted to get out of those hours where you could be at church. And look, praise be to God. Man, that's one of the most unsung positions and things over here, sitting over here in the corner. You don't know how much I appreciate, and the musicians appreciate you and Harry being here first thing Sunday morning and putting all that together. Cindy and Harry and taking the bull by the horns when it needed to be taken and wrestled it and got control of it. So, you know, praise be to God.
There's a lot of praying on that golf course.
Yes, Lord. Let me make this point, please.
But you get the drift of what I'm saying here. It's okay to miss church once in a while.
But just because you're missing church don't mean you're forgetting about God.
There you go. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. You know, this author said, talk about spiritual things and alternatives. And this surprised me. He says, Wicca, which is a form of witchcraft, he said it was the fastest growing faith in the U.S. I just said it's growing fast in the U.S. did paraphrase him a little bit. Now, I don't know that. That sort of shocked me. And again, this statistics come from Pew, PEW research, and they're pretty reputable about statistics about stuff like this. You know, when I read this, I was shocked and I was sad. But then I remembered that the Bible actually predicts this. The Bible actually predicts this. In 1 Timothy 4:1, of course, Paul writing a personal letter to Timothy, the Spirit explicitly says that in the latter times, some will fall away from the faith, paying attention to deceitful spirits and doctrines of demons. You know, I started to do this message about a month ago, and the Spirit said, no, don't do it. I had it about halfway prepared, and said, golly, Lord, why you let me halfway prepare a message and don't do it? But I just couldn't let it go. I couldn't let it go. And I said, well, I can't just leave it with that scripture right there. That says it. What that part said, I mean, you are witnessing what this article is saying. Again, that's one of the things when you see in these churches, these small churches, and I hear these stories. And in fact, last night we went to the district meeting, saw the new district superintendent, pastors, and what have you. And Angela just happened to sit down with the wife, her husband, the pastor over in the Beaufort area, New Prospect. You know, the situation's just not good. People refuse to, and that's not just any, I mean, people refuse to modernize a little bit. They get all worked up. And I'm not saying that church, I'm not looking for a hymn. You know, oh my goodness, you're not singing out of the hymnal. You know what? I see that better. I got to put my glasses on when I sing out of the red hymnal. You know, so the point is, we have to change with the times about stuff like this. We have to modernize a little bit. But, you know, going back to that scripture, we are in the later times. And this scripture predicts what we're now seeing. It's telling us that. You know, Paul wrote this around 60 A.D., roughly, in that time period. It was one of his later letters, again, as a personal letter to Timothy. And in fact, it might have been one of his, I think 2 Timothy was the last one. But anyway, and said, you know, basically said, what Paul wrote about is coming to pass, and the statistics of that article prove it to be the case, in my opinion. Now, let me say this. Not all the people who are falling away are seduced by deceitful spirits and doctrines of demons. I'm not saying that everybody that chooses not to go to church, not be religiously affiliated. They say this goes across Jews, Catholics, pretty much any of the Judeo-Christian religions. I'm not saying everybody is all demonic. That's not what I'm saying. But on the other hand, Paul says that's part of the equation. You know, Wicca is witchcraft. I don't know much about Wicca. But it's witchcraft. And witchcraft, I will say this, it's a doctrine of demons. I mean, my goodness, the Old Testament and some of the New Testament, you know, is talks about that, demons being cast out in certain situations. Now, of course, you have the Salem witch trials of years ago. deceitful spirits have always been around, trying to lure us away from God and church. You know, that's been the case. Trying to lure us away from church. Trying to lure us away from God. You know, Jesus goes into more detail as to why this happens. You know, this is what I found this when I found this scripture and read this and thought about it, said, oh, okay, now I can do this message because now it makes a little more sense to me. But Jesus says, he says it's a soil problem. He said it's a problem with the soil. Does that sound soil? S-O-I-L. The soil. Prior to this, if you read in Mark chapter 4, Jesus tells the crowd what we call the parable of the sowers. And that only the seed that grew was on good soil. It was on the good soil. Then, if you read on through, again, prior to this, the disciples sort of take him aside and said, what do you mean by all of this? And they were a little bit confused. And you know, Jesus has some criticism of them. I can't remember specifics of it. But he says, let me explain this to you in detail. I guess he had a private teaching with them. And he basically explains to the disciples about seed being the Word. The seed is the Word. And for a seed to flourish and grow, mustard seed, any kind of seed, it's got to be in good soil. Because prior to that, he talked about rocks and thorns and all this kind of stuff. It just didn't grow. I know that. You know, everybody here is probably planted a tomato plant or something, a pepper plant. You know, I ain't got to worry about it. I know good soil when I see it. My problem is deer. You know, deer and what's them woodchuck things. And chipmunks, there's a wood, big old gophers. 410 take care of this one. I'll think of that. But the deer, my goodness, I think I figured it out. I got some of the stinking spray stuff you can buy at Home Depot, and they will not come here. Plus, I took my sweaty T-shirts, got me out working in the yard, and I hung them over the tomato cages. That's bad enough. And then I sprayed that deer stink spray around the plant. They will not come. I ain't had a nibble on the plant. Angela sprayed it time too. She did. She go, ooh, I've never seen it. But anyway, I'm sorry. I digress. But you need good soil. Seed has to be sown into good soil. Let's pick the story up in Mark 4, verse 14. The sower sows the words. And these are the ones who are beside the road and where the seed is sown. And when they hear, immediately Satan comes and takes away the word which has been sown in them. Right? In a similar way, these are the ones whom seed has been sown on rocky places. And when they hear the word, immediately they receive it with joy. And they have no firm root in themselves, but are temporary. Then when affliction and persecution arises because of the word, they immediately fall away. That's what we see a lot. I see that a lot. And others are the ones to whom seed was sown among the thorns. These are the ones who have heard the word, and the worries of the world and the deceitfulness of riches and the desires for other things enter in and choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. See that? Especially in our rich society, with everything we need and all that. And in verse 20. And those are the ones whom the seed was sown on the good soil. And they hear the word and accept it and bear fruit 30, 60, and 100-fold. The word is sown, but unless it falls on good soil, it will not mature and grow. It will not sprout, it will not mature, it will not grow, it will not produce fruit. Be the good soil. Jesus also said people will hear the word, but let satanic forces lure them away. Be the good soil. Some receive the word joyfully, but don't let it take root and fall away. I've seen that many times. Many times. Be the good soil. Others here let the worries of life overtake them and fall away. Jesus said, be the good soil. Some hear and let deceitful spirits seduce them and they fall away. What do they need to do? Be the good soil. Those that hear the word, accept it, and bear abundant fruit, they are the good soil. That's what Jesus is saying. They are the good soil. Be the good soil. Be the good soil. You be the good soil. Don't drift away from Jesus. Stand firm. You are the good soil. I know as soon as I prepared this message, and I'm going to be preaching to the choir, as the old term goes. Y'all are the good soil. I know you are. I see the fruit that you bear. Yeah, there's struggles in life. A lot of us have been through it. You stood firm. You have been the good soil. For the life of me, I just don't understand. You know, the people that hear the word, receive it with joy, and then just drift away. That's one of those pastoral dilemmas, you know, that come up in conversation. You know, why do people do that? And there's many different things. Again, I know this sounds like a criticism. I'm just telling you what I observed, what the Word of God said. And when I looked at this and put those two together, read that article, I said, oh my goodness, yes, it's happening. I see it. I'm witnessing it. We're witnessing it. Now, what does that mean to us, the good soul? Well, continue to be the good soul. And I say this, continue to sow seeds. You know, I'm not a soil expert. But I know good soil where to see it. But, you know, sometimes seeds will sprout in anything. You know, sometimes you just have to take a weed eater to the thorns. Sometimes you just need to get the rocks out of the way and re-till it.